Hey there, wonderful viewer. Where in the world are you watching from? A cozy little town or a buzzing big city? Drop it in the comments. And don't forget to share this video with your friends and family. It truly supports my channel. Let's dive in. It was a little after midnight. I was barefoot, standing in the kitchen, absent-mindedly pressing cold risotto onto a fork when the phone rang. Sabrina's voice came through the line, unnervingly calm, eerily precise. Not a crack, not a hitch, none of the warmth or history of the woman I'd once envisioned spending a lifetime with. "Kevin's in trouble," she said. She didn't need to clarify. Kevin, her ex, the one she had once condemned to her rearview mirror, assured me he was a closed chapter, forgotten, irrelevant, deleted. I stood motionless, waiting for the familiar retreat, the soft correction, that gentle pivot where she'd say, "I didn't mean it like that." But that moment never arrived. Instead, her voice grew colder, sharper. "If you can't accept this, if you're unwilling to support me, maybe being alone would suit you better. Support me." That phrase struck like a blade, clean and deep. It wasn't just our engagement that splintered in that moment. It wasn't only the relationship that fractured. Something deeper broke, silent and irreversible. I didn't raise my voice, didn't argue. I simply stood there, staring at the wall, as the scaffolding of our life together, dreams, promises, a shared tomorrow, crumbled with the quiet finality of something that had never truly existed at all. Before we dive into today's story, let us know where you're tuning in from. Your voices fuel this space, and it's your thoughts that keep the conversation alive. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single story, ones brimming with heartbreak, resilience, and the twists no one ever sees coming. Now, settle in, grab a warm drink, because this is one you'll want to feel all the way through. There's a strange kind of grief in being the man others aspire to be, while secretly gasping for air in a room where everyone else is breathing easily. I was standing in the middle of the Four Seasons Ballroom in Beverly Hills, a shrine of gleaming marble, cascading crystal, and champagne stacked in elegant symmetry. The atmosphere crackled with influence. VCs, tech giants, power producers, and boardroom kings. The kind of crowd that measured value in timepieces and quarterly growth. And on paper, I was one of them. A billionaire, a disruptor. The man who reshaped fintech from the ground up. Lucas Calder, an industry phantom turned household name in wealth strategy. At conferences and in jet cabins, my name moved in whispers. The press adored the narrative. A kid from Oregon, once sleeping on a borrowed mattress, now owning penthouses that scraped the sky. But tonight wasn't about empires. It was supposed to be a celebration, our celebration. "You could at least try to look happy," Sabrina murmured, her arm curled through mine. Her fingers were icy against my skin. "You are the groom." I turned to her, forcing a passable grin. She was radiant, as always, effortless in her perfection, tailored Valentino, skin like porcelain, a presence that had been born and bred for the limelight. Sabrina Monroe wasn't just beautiful, she was expected. She made sense on magazine covers, and to everyone watching, we made sense too. The success story, the perfect match. But underneath the surface, something was quietly off. Subtle, but unshakable. It started with her phone. She checked it once, then again, then a third time in under 10 minutes. Not boredom, not habit. This was something else, something urgent. I glanced down just as the screen lit up again. I didn't need to see the message. Just one name told me everything. Kevin Adler. There he was, the ghost we never truly exorcised. Flashy hedge fund manager, exotic cars, Instagram lifestyle curated for envy. The next day, I was standing in the middle of it, surrounded by the smell of old dust, grease, and stories etched into the walls. The realtor hesitated. "It's a serious undertaking," she said cautiously. "I'm not buying potential," I replied, pen poised. I'm buying peace. What followed were raw, grueling weeks. A bare mattress on the ground, one folding chair, a camping stove propped up on cardboard boxes. I tore down rotted drywall, pulled up buckled floorboards, and lugged debris down 3 steep flights. The elevator hadn't worked since the Bush era. This wasn't about frugality. I could have hired a team, easily. But I needed the sweat, needed to remind myself what my hands could still do. I found a neighborhood hardware store and picked up a saw, a simple bench, some glue, and sandpaper. I built a table. It was crude, uneven edges, slanted legs, but it was mine. Every imperfection carried weight. The following morning, I put together a bookshelf, then a chair. Neighbors started noticing. A woman from upstairs asked if I could make a desk for her studio. I said yes. Why not? She paid in cash. Word got around. The cafe owner down the street wanted 3 tables. Someone else asked for floating shelves. Lucas. Built wasn't a company, not in the formal sense. Just me, some tools, and the silence. And for the first time since Sabrina shattered our future with "cancel the wedding," the quiet didn't feel like punishment. It felt like healing. It's strange how quickly stillness begins to feel like home. 3 years have passed since I closed the door on that Beverly Hills penthouse and stepped away from a version of myself I can barely recall. The loft isn't under construction anymore. It's become a home, a real one. The air still holds a bit of sawdust, sure, but now it blends with the smell of fresh coffee, clean linen, and whatever Eliza's cooking that night. Morning light spills in through tall windows, catching on hand-built shelves, the dining table I carved myself, and a fireplace made of bricks older than my grandfather. Lucas. Built has evolved into more than a name. It's a brand, maybe even a movement, if you believe the design magazines. Architects, chefs, boutique hotels, they all want the Lucas aesthetic. Industrial warmth, craftsmanship, no shortcuts, no assembly lines. I never intended to build something big. All I wanted was stillness. Funny thing about peace, if you guard it long enough, it transforms into something sturdier, almost like strength. And the most surprising part? I didn't forge it alone. Eliza walked in one wet Thursday afternoon asking about a custom-built desk for her architecture firm. She was everything Sabrina wasn't: uncomplicated, quietly perceptive, not born into luxury, but the kind of woman who carved her own place with grit. What began as talk about joinery and wood finishes slowly bled into conversations over coffee. Coffee led to dinner. Dinner turned into this life. 3 years on, there are no scripts to follow. Just us, the life we created, a home full of light, and 2 kids. Aiden is 6, Maya just turned 3, and they both wear that same crooked half-smile Eliza gets when she's deep in thought but won't admit it. Her voice drifts in from the other room. Lucas, the Phillips head, top drawer, right? I brush the sawdust off my palms, step away from the nursery shelves I've been building, and glance toward the kitchen. Maya's sprawled on the floor, legs tucked under her, furiously focused on coloring. Aiden's buried in a Lego project, questionable engineering, but artistic in a wild, brilliant way. This right here? It's a kind of wealth that never graces the covers of glossy magazines. Then the email appears. No chime, no alert. Just a plain, empty subject line and a name in the sender field, Kevin Adler. For a second, I can't bring myself to click it. His name alone drops a familiar weight into my stomach, cold and unwelcome, like breathing in air from a box that's been sealed too long, thick, stale, and loaded with ghosts. I promised myself I'd never open that box again. But curiosity has teeth, so I open it. Just one sentence. Lucas, I assume you've heard. It's out there now. Call me. No sign-off, no explanation, no apology. I shut the laptop. I already know what he's talking about. The rumors have been boiling over for months, quiet murmurs that grew into headline storms. Kevin Adler's hedge fund collapses amid fraud investigation. SEC files charges, insider trading, money laundering, securities violations. Millions lost. Dozens of investors devastated. The chain reaction is violent and fast. I log into the old email, the one tied to the life I left behind, the one untouched by Lucas built or the family I've built since. It's a mess. Warnings, crisis updates, legal alerts. Margot Monroe's holistic brand facing federal investigation, embezzlement, tax evasion, falsified financials. Her empire, frozen, her charities, disbanded. Even Thomas isn't spared. His medical license is on the line. 2 wrongful death cases have surfaced. Skeletons he buried years ago now clawing into daylight. This isn't a scandal. It's a crash landing. Raw, ugly, and very public. Then my phone lights up, a number I haven't seen in a long time. 310, Beverly Hills. I don't need to answer. I already know who it is. I let it ring, once, twice, then nothing. Eliza glances over, concern etched in her brow. You okay? I flip the phone screen down on the table. Yeah, I lie. Just ghosts knocking. But it's not just echoes. It's the sound of old lives trying to claw their way into a world they never imagined I'd manage to create. And then, the next morning, it happens. A knock. Not hesitant. Not aggressive. Measured. 3 clear taps against the glass and steel door to our loft. I set my drill aside, wipe my hands on my jeans, and glance toward the front entry. There are 4 figures outside. Even from here, I know who they are. Sabrina, Margot, Thomas, and Kevin. They look diminished. Not in size, but in spirit. The polished veneer they wore like armor in Beverly Hills is gone. What remains is fragile, weathered, especially Sabrina. Her face hasn't aged from time, but from regret. The kind that festers over years, eating from the inside. I don't move, just watch. Then I hear Aiden's voice behind me. Dad? Someone's here. I turn. He's standing with a half-finished model airplane in hand, his brow furrowed. Yeah, bud, I say, eyes flicking back to the door. I see. He steps closer, peers past me out the window, tilts his head. Who are they? I crouch down, place a steady hand on his small shoulder, and meet his eyes. No one who matters, son. It lands with the force of lightning, clean, direct, shaped by the gravity of memory. There's no fury behind it, no bitterness clinging to the edges, just truth, sharp and immovable. I swing the door open but don't move to greet them. No smile greets them, no gesture invites them in. Only presence, firm, unshaken. Sabrina's eyes sweep past me into the home's quiet core, over the threshold, down the hall lined with frozen moments. Eliza curled around the kids on the porch swing, Aiden beaming beneath his too big backpack on his first school morning, Maya surrounded by sunflowers taller than she is. Her gaze keeps moving, across the kitchen island, into the living room, where every handcrafted piece of furniture bears the marks of my hands, mute but resolute, proof of a life built, not borrowed. This is not a story staged for others. It's not a gallery of curated smiles. It's real. Kevin shifts beside her, arms wrapped across his chest like armor that doesn't quite fit anymore. Not here. Not now. Margot blinks rapidly, like she's trying to reconcile the man before her with the one they all left behind. The one they assumed they understood. Thomas clears his throat softly, his hands folded behind him like someone about to deliver a diagnosis he can't soften. Silence unfurls. Rain begins to patter against the metal awning, gentle and rhythmic, like the prelude to a sorrow no one wanted to compose. I cross my arms, letting the hush swell until it thickens the air. Sabrina speaks first, her voice thin, trembling. Lucas, I didn't mean to show up like this. I lift an eyebrow. And yet, here you are. She swallows hard. I had to see you. My tone remains even, controlled. There's no heat in it, just the edge of tempered steel. And what exactly were you hoping to find? She opens her mouth, but nothing comes out. Margot, always the diplomat, jumps in. We didn't want to cause a scene, we just... Her words falter. We came because we found your address, and... I cut across her. Which none of you had any right to do. Thomas steps forward, trying to bring calm, his voice strained and stilted. Lucas, please. Things haven't been easy lately. And there it is. The reason they're standing here. Outside, the rain grows heavier, its rhythm thickening the space between us, echoing everything they don't say. Sabrina fidgets, her coat damp and clinging, strands of soaked hair stuck to her cheek. Yet her eyes return to the life behind me, as though it's only just sinking in that the world she left behind didn't freeze in her absence. It carried on, it grew, it flourished. I stay quiet. I take a single step back, just enough to open space. Not an invitation, not quite a dismissal, more like a challenge. Go ahead. Step over it. Kevin's jaw tightens. You think this makes you better than us? I tilt my head, serene. No, I answer, voice steady. A pause. But it means I didn't need you to survive. The words strike exactly where I intended. The silence that follows no longer feels awkward. It feels conclusive. They didn't come seeking forgiveness or closure. They came because, somehow, they believed I'd still be here, waiting. I leaned, just enough to clarify. This isn't a welcome. This is a line in the sand. Sabrina's voice breaks this time, softer, more unsure. Lucas, I never thought... She hesitates, then corrects herself. I didn't expect things would turn out like this. I don't flinch. Like what? Standing outside a life that moved on without you? Her lips press together. She glances at Margot, whose hand grips the strap of her designer bag so tightly it bleaches her knuckles. Thomas fixes his eyes somewhere behind me, as if pretending detachment might spare him. And Kevin wears that same brittle smirk he once used to hide his fear. It doesn't work here. I remain silent. Let the weight of it all speak for me. Then Aiden steps in, barefoot, holding the model plane he's been assembling, a crease in his brow. Dad, who are they? My hand lands on his shoulder, firm and sure. My voice doesn't waver. No one that matters, son. Sabrina recoils, as if I'd struck her. Margot's mouth opens, but no sound follows. Kevin lets out a weak chuckle, eyes pinned to the floor. Thomas shifts again, clearing his throat like it might summon grace from thin air. I turn to Aiden, gentler now. Go find Maya. Stay with her in the back, all right? Your mom will be out soon. Okay, he nods, then runs off. His footsteps echo against the hardwood and disappear. When I look back to the doorway, my eyes are sharp, resolute. Margot is the first to find her footing again, her stance smoothing into a mask of composure. Lucas, we didn't come to drag up the past. We only... She falters again, searching for something that might sound like humility. She finds nothing. It's just... We've had a rough time lately. Rough, I echo. Interesting word. She forced down the lump rising in her throat, the strain in her voice unmistakable. Kevin's business had collapsed, completely and beyond repair. The story had gone viral. You've probably come across it. I have, I replied. He's entangled in legal issues now, she rushed on, as if glossing over indictments was the new trend in reputation management. And the foundation isn't doing so great either. Is that what we're calling a federal investigation into fraud and money laundering now? I asked dryly. A rough patch? Thomas cleared his throat abruptly, like he was preparing to speak. Don't, I said sharply. You don't get to show up in my home and try to steer the conversation anymore. Those days are gone. His mouth clamped shut. Sabrina leaned forward, visibly shaken, her hands unsteady despite her effort to hide it. Lucas, please hear me out. We didn't come here expecting anything, she began, flicking glances from her parents to Kevin, then settling on me again. It's just, everything spiraled. We lost control, and we thought, maybe, you'd be willing to talk. I let the silence settle thick between us, watching her unravel beneath it. Talk, I echoed, my voice flat, emotionless. About what, exactly? She swallowed again. About us. About whether there's still a chance to start over. You've clearly built something solid here. That undid me. I let out a short, stunned laugh, not spiteful, just stunned at the audacity. You want to reclaim the life you walked away from? Her eyes welled instantly, but I didn't bother to guess if it was regret or shame. Didn't matter. You told me to get with the program, I said, my voice quiet but cutting. Your exact words, and I remember them, were, if you can't handle it, maybe we're not meant to be. Her lips parted, probably ready with some excuse. I was young. I didn't understand. No. I cut her off coldly. You were old enough to understand the consequences of your decisions. You chose your path, and when you did, you made damn sure I couldn't follow. Kevin crossed his arms, jaw so tight I could almost hear the tension in his teeth. We don't have to stand here and take this, he bit out. You're right, I said. The door's right there. Use it. He shifted, clearly eager to storm out, but Margot jumped in before he could. Lucas, be serious. After everything we've been through, after everything we meant to each other. There is no we, Margot, I snapped. There's what used to be, and there's what is. Stop trying to connect them. Thomas took the gentler route, trying to reason with me. You've done remarkably well. We all see it. But surely you know how life goes. People make mistakes. Mistakes? I said, narrowing my eyes. Is that your word for it? Sabrina's voice shook. Yes. No, I said, like the crack of glass underfoot. A mistake is losing your phone, locking your keys in the car. What you did? That was intentional. You didn't just happen to run back to your ex less than a week before our wedding. You didn't stumble into telling me to cancel everything like I was an afterthought in your narrative. She blinked fast, as if it might somehow erase the weight of what I was saying. I didn't think, she began. You didn't think I'd get through it? I finished for her. That's what you meant. You figured you were abandoning something fragile. Something you could return to, on your terms, when it was convenient. Margot bristled, trying to salvage some kind of grace. You're clearly doing incredibly well, really. We're proud of that. Proud? I repeated, with a bitter chuckle. You're proud of the man you tried to erase? Sabrina's voice dropped to a whisper. I never imagined you could be happy without me. And there it was, the ugly, decaying truth that had always sat beneath it all. I know, I said, soft now. Because you weren't my happiness, Sabrina. You were the reason I learned what it meant to find it. That broke her. Her knees buckled slightly, her lips moved, but no sound followed. Kevin cracked first. You act like you're perfect, like you've never messed up, like this little crafted life makes you morally superior. I tilted my head. No, it just means I made it through, and I didn't crush anyone else on the way out. He surged forward, fists clenched, but Thomas stepped in, grabbing his arm and dragging him back. That's enough, the older man said sharply, his voice low with restrained fury. You're embarrassing yourself. Just then, Eliza emerged quietly at the far end of the corridor, barefoot, Maya resting easily on her hip. Her gaze flicked from me to the unfamiliar faces gathered just inside our home. She remained silent. She didn't have to speak. The way she stood, still, grounded, conveyed more than any outburst ever could. Her presence alone carried weight and certainty. The little girl in her arms, our daughter, stood for everything that had come after the collapse. Eliza holding her was no less than a proclamation. No raised voice necessary. Even Sabrina caught it. Her eyes drifted from Eliza to the wall behind me, where framed snapshots hung, chronicling a life that had continued without her. And not just continued, thrived. Margot's lips parted, as if she might try to shift the blame or offer some desperate plea. But I lifted my hand slightly, halting her. Don't. My voice was calm, but absolute. You're not part of this anymore. Not this home. Not this life I built after you left. You all chose your path. Sabrina's mouth trembled. I was hoping maybe we could. You hoped wrong. Outside, rain whispered against the tin awning, filling the silence they no longer could. I stepped back, not much, just enough to deliver the final blow. There's nothing left to say. Eliza moved forward quietly and stood beside me. She reached for my hand. Our fingers laced together effortlessly. No words were exchanged. We didn't need any. The connection said everything. Leave, I told them, my tone even and unshaken, before you make this worse than it already is. Kevin muttered something under his breath, petty and useless, and turned away. Margot followed, head high, though her shoulders betrayed defeat. Thomas lingered only a moment before trailing after them. Sabrina paused at the door, lingering like she expected me to waver. She found nothing. She never would again. They vanished into the storm. I closed the door behind them. No drama, no force. It felt like placing the final period on a story long overdue. The soft click of the lock echoed louder than any argument ever could. It didn't just mark the end. It buried it. A line drawn between who I used to be and who I had become since they walked away. I stood there for a moment, hand resting on the deadbolt, simply listening, rain pattering on the windows, my steady breathing, Maya's gleeful laughter as Aiden scurried down the hall, Eliza's soft steps returning to the kitchen. No tightness in my chest, no lingering resentment, no pain, just stillness, and God, it felt pure. I walked to the balcony, slid the glass door open just enough, and let the cool Manhattan breeze drift inside. Rain had turned the city to silver, rooftops shining, reflections slicing through the gloom like glass. I picked up my coffee mug from the railing, the one Eliza gave me last Christmas, etched with built not bought, and leaned over slightly. From this height, everything below seemed distant. People shrank to dots. The streets buzzed like a soft drone. What once felt like chaos now looked like composition, sharp, deliberate, even beautiful. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. A breaking news alert. Kevin Adler indicted for wire fraud, securities fraud, and money laundering, facing up to 25 years in federal prison. A small, quiet smile tugged at my lips. Another alert followed. Margot Monroe's wellness empire implodes amid tax fraud scandal, assets frozen, foundation dissolved. I kept scrolling. I shouldn't have, but I did. Dr. Thomas Monroe suspended. A man who built his fortune by stepping over others without flinching. She had promised me, repeatedly, that he was gone. That chapter was over. Sabrina clicked the screen off like it was nothing, turned back to a conversation about luxury properties in Maui. Her laughter, flawless, empty. I did what I'd always done, pushed the unease down, told myself it was nerves, the stress of planning, nothing worth unraveling over. And then came a pause. Barely there. But if you were listening, truly listening, it was impossible to miss. I squeezed her hand, lightly. 4 days, I said with a smile that almost felt real. Just 4 more, and we're there. She smiled back, but her eyes didn't. Yeah, she said, it's perfect. But we both knew it wasn't. Her parents made their entrance. Dr. Thomas Monroe, dressed in a suit that practically whispered, tailored in Milan, with his silver hair sculpted like it belonged in a commercial, clapped me on the back as though I were a promising stock option. Floating beside him was his wife, Margot, swathed in delicate silks and looping pearls, radiating a grace that could disarm a room while cutting to the bone with a single glance. Her smile was thin, knowing. Weddings are exhausting, darling, but you'll survive. Let's hope, Thomas added, chuckling. Marriage is really a lesson in compromise, especially for men from outside our usual sphere. It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. So smooth it shimmered, and yet underneath it, something spoiled. I gave a polite nod, remembered to breathe. Cameras flashed. A reporter from Vanity Fair Weddings asked us to pose. Sabrina detached from me to take her solo portraits, twice as many as ours together, then slipped back into her phone as if it had called her home. Someone asked her how the day was going. She faltered, barely, but the delay hit like a bell in a cathedral. Oh, yes, everything's just wonderful. That micro-hesitation, it echoed. 2 malpractice cases under review, wrongful deaths under investigation. No quiet fade this time, no dignified silence. This was loud, unforgiving, public. I didn't toast, I didn't gloat, I didn't call anyone. I simply took another measured sip of coffee and kept my eyes on the sky. Eliza joined me, wrapping her arms gently around my waist. Her chin rested lightly on my shoulder as she glanced at her own screen. It's everywhere, she said softly, trending around the globe. I gave a small nod, voice steady. Yeah, it is. She nestled in a bit closer. What's it feel like? I let out a slow breath, as though exhaling the smoke from a fire I hadn't lit, but had always known would burn. She chuckled quietly, not with cruelty, but with clarity. You didn't strike the match, she said. You just made sure you weren't close enough to catch flame. Exactly. From the other room, Aiden's voice burst in. Dad, you've got to see what I made. I turned as he came bounding toward me, barefoot and beaming, holding a wrinkled paper high above his head. His smile was so big it nearly swallowed his face. He handed it to me, a crayon drawing, full of color and clumsy lines. It showed our house, the family, the loft with its tall windows, the rooftop stretching behind us. Eliza stood by the kitchen island, Maya sat on the floor playing, and Aiden had drawn himself waving both hands in the air. At the bottom, in crooked, oversized letters, it read, Our home. Built by Dad. Loved by all. Something deep stirred in my chest. Not grief, not nostalgia. Something more solid, permanent. I dropped to one knee and pulled him into a hug so tight he giggled into my shoulder. This, I said, is the best gift anyone's ever given me, even better than that huge dining table. Way better, he agreed, nodding. Later that night, once the kids were tucked in and the rain had faded to a faint mist, Eliza and I sat out on the rooftop. We had blankets draped around us, a bottle of wine open between us, the city stretching far and glittering in every direction. I scrolled through the news, watching it all unravel in real time. Kevin had been taken in, arrested mid-round at a golf course of all places. An agent in a windbreaker slapped cuffs on him right on the 9th green. It couldn't have been scripted better. Meanwhile, every one of Margot's accounts had been seized. Not just her charity accounts, but everything. Her own money, the Malibu estate, the Aspen hideaway, even the villa in Lake Como. The art she once paraded all over Instagram? Gone, seized and auctioned off. Thomas tried to keep his image intact, but then the scandals broke. Botched surgeries, shady prescriptions, malpractice cases. When the cash dried up, so did the silence. Everything they'd built collapsed like a house of cards. And Sabrina? She didn't escape either. Her divorce from Kevin made tabloid headlines for weeks. She became a walking headline. Heiress left penniless as Adler empire crumbles. Eliza traced the rim of her glass slowly, watching me. Do you think they honestly believed you'd save them? She asked. I shook my head. People like that never think the fire's for them. They think they own the house, the locks, the doors. They think rules are optional. She turned to study me more closely. And what about us? I gave her hand a light squeeze, smiling. Ours was locked the day you stepped inside. She leaned her head against my shoulder. No second thoughts? None, I whispered, pressing a kiss into her hair. Because what we'd built, it hadn't come from their kindness or favor. It had grown from the scraps they tossed aside. And as the days rolled on, the collapse of their empire continued. More headlines, more fallout. Margot's so-called charities were revealed to be scams. Hidden offshore accounts emerged. Her Lux Tulum wellness retreat? Just a front for laundering money. Kevin's name was stripped from every brand, every initiative. He wasn't just disgraced. He became a warning. The same man who once mocked me for being beneath him was now plastered across the media as the face of fraud. Thomas lost his license to practice. His finances were frozen. Lawsuits swarmed like flies. Their fortunes vanished, along with their images, their power, their myths. But within our walls, life simply continued. Each morning began the same. Maya padding softly down the hallway, blanket in tow, eyes squinting as she climbed into our bed. Aiden already up in the kitchen, pouring an avalanche of cereal into a bowl while pretending to serve lattes. Eliza pacing nearby, tablet in hand, sketching ideas for new kitchen layouts. Lucas built, kept expanding, quietly, confidently, an 18-month wait list, new builds underway in Tokyo, Copenhagen, Morocco. Customers weren't just buying furniture, they were buying history. They were investing in resilience. Every scar in the wood told a story worth owning. This wasn't vengeance. It wasn't even about redemption. It was a life, rebuilt with purpose. A few nights later, we were back on the balcony. Eliza handed me a mug of tea, warm and fragrant in the cool night air. "Do you ever think about what came before?" she asked. I took a sip, letting the warmth settle in me. "Not much, not these days." She raised an eyebrow. "Not even a little?" For a moment, I drifted back to that Beverly Hills kitchen, still holding my fork as Sabrina looked me in the eye and said, "Call off the wedding." I remembered the numb shock, the disbelief, the hollow ache in my stomach. But then I looked around, at our garden above the city, the soft light behind our windows, 2 children sleeping soundly, and the woman beside me who had never asked me to be anyone else. "No," I said quietly. "I don't look back, because what's ahead, it's more than I ever dreamed of." She smiled at that, peaceful, steady. "Good." I turned to her. "Do you regret any of it? Choosing this?" She didn't hesitate. "Not for 1 second," she said. "We didn't arrive at this life by accident. It was a deliberate choice." I slipped my arm around her, our fingers intertwined. The city pulsed around us, boundless, electric. Somewhere the Monroes were still picking through the wreckage of what they'd lost, desperate to assign blame for the collapse of their empire. But that part of the story no longer concerned us. The blaze that consumed them was never ours to extinguish. That door had closed, tightly, permanently. No one ever mentions how final endings really are, how still. There's no climactic music, no curtain call, just an overwhelming quiet, thick, certain, irrevocable. It had been 7 days since the knock came, since Sabrina, Margot, Thomas, and Kevin stood outside in the rain, soaked not just from the weather, but from the undeniable realization that they'd been left behind. The door they once slammed shut behind them never swung open again. I hadn't heard a single word since. No texts, no voicemails, just the clear, deliberate silence of people who understood they weren't welcome anymore. That night, like the 6 before it, I found myself on the rooftop. Inside, Eliza was settling Maya in for the night. Aiden was on the couch, legs folded beneath him, carefully constructing yet another Lego spaceship. probably his third of the day. The kind of laughter only heard when children feel completely safe floated through the windows, rising above the low hum of the city. I turned toward the patio door, custom-made, leading into our loft. My fingers brushed the grain of the wood, each line and imperfection a testament that beauty doesn't demand flawlessness. I found the bolt and slid it home. The sound was soft, almost imperceptible, yet heavier with meaning than anything those four had ever offered. It wasn't just about keeping them out. It was a quiet vow. You can't destroy what you abandoned and expect to return when the flames have cooled. Not here. Not anymore. I walked inside and joined Eliza on the sofa. She handed me a mug of peppermint tea and leaned into me, her head resting softly on my shoulder. She didn't need to say a thing. That's what real love feels like. Not performative, not conditional. Simply there. I glanced down at her, then toward the hallway where the kids' voices echoed faintly. You know, I murmured, I used to think closure came from the ones who hurt you. She tilted her head toward me, curious. Yeah? Yeah. I nodded. I thought I'd get the apology, the explanation, something grand that made the pain make sense. I smiled, not out of sadness, but with the calm that follows survival. But that's not how it works. Closure isn't something given. It's something you forge, piece by piece, choice by choice. Her hand reached for mine, firm and certain. Exactly, she said. I gave her fingers a small squeeze. They assumed I was waiting, that I'd frozen in time, hoping to be chosen again. But I wasn't idle. I was building. She smiled. You always were. The next morning unfolded like so many before. At exactly 6:20, Maya climbed into bed with us, dragging her blanket and thumb in mouth. Aiden was already at the kitchen table, sketching out a wildly detailed treehouse he swore we'd build once summer arrived. Eliza floated between her tablet and the stove, balancing pancakes with looming work deadlines. And me, I stood in the doorway, coffee warming my palms, taking in the life we'd made. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, catching edges of photo frames and polished wood. The table I built with my own hands. The photographs, not symbols of rescue, but markers of resilience. This was true wealth, not square footage, not bank balances. This, a home created with purpose, a family born from refusing to be broken, a life earned, not inherited. I picked up my phone. Not to scroll for messages. None would come, not to check headlines. Their downfall was no longer news. Instead, I opened my gallery, where I found Aiden's drawing from last week. It read, Our Home. Built by Dad, loved by all. I smiled, set it as my wallpaper, and locked the screen. Some ghosts will always knock again. They dress in longing, in apology, in the pretense of remorse. But they only stay if you open the door, and I never would. Not now, not ever. That night, after the dishes were washed, after the kids had been tucked in and Eliza was curled on her side of the bed, I stepped onto the patio one final time. My hand found the wood of the door, the lock. A parting word for the man I once was, standing in a Beverly Hills kitchen, fork in hand, risotto cold, listening to the woman he loved say, Cancel the wedding. Do as you're told. Be alone. To that man, I whispered, You don't live here anymore. I slid the bolt shut. Click. The door was locked. Permanently. There are truths that only struggle can uncover. Truths that ease and comfort will always keep hidden. It's easy to confuse attachment with love, to see endless waiting as devotion, and to mistake reopening old wounds for an act of forgiveness. But not every character in our lives is meant to play a permanent role, and not every farewell needs to end in reunion. There is a profound, quiet courage in walking away, not driven by bitterness or anger, but by the choice to embrace peace over turmoil, dignity over dependency, and self-respect over repeated pain. Some chapters are better left closed. Not every journey needs a dramatic conclusion. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in proving someone wrong, but in building a life so rich, so full, and so deeply yours that it becomes undeniably clear they were never the center of your universe to begin with. Our story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the way I tell stories, head over to my channel and check out my other videos. May the force be with you. See you soon, my friend. A faint fault line, barely visible beneath a flawless surface. Except I felt it. The beginning of a break in something that should have been unbreakable. I turned away, letting the ambient buzz of conversation sweep past. Waitstaff glided by with champagne flutes. Laughter erupted by the piano, brittle and too sharp. Overhead, a chandelier scattered light across the pristine marble, opulent, perfect, hollow. Then I caught my own reflection in the polished floor. The tuxedo, Tom Ford. The watch, worth more than the home my parents scraped together when they married. And the crowd, people who knew my name. And still, the question resurfaced, the one I'd been burying. If this was everything, why did it all feel like it was quietly coming undone? Across the room, Sabrina's voice drifted over, light and detached. Sorry, just need to check something real quick. She smiled as she turned away, her face bathed in the cold glow of her screen, vanishing into the corridor like a shadow wrapped in light. I didn't move, just stood there, watching her silhouette dissolve into marble and brilliance. Something pulled tight in my chest, sharp and heavy. My hand found the ring box in my pocket, velvet beneath my fingers. Over $7 million, platinum, bespoke, a promise carved in metal, a future engraved. But watching her type furiously into that glowing void, the feeling returned. That quiet, unmistakable dread that maybe forever had never really belonged to us. That maybe it had never been real. Cancel the wedding, she said, like she was asking for a favor. No emotion, no crisis, just a simple command. I stood in the kitchen, barefoot, my eyes locked on the marble countertop. The risotto on my plate had gone cold, untouched. My fork hovered mid-air. The line stayed silent, save for the rhythm of her breath, controlled, shallow. What did you just say? I asked, my voice brittle, almost foreign. She inhaled, deliberate and calm. Then, Kevin's sick. Kevin, her ex. The one she insisted was in her past. A name buried for over a year, a chapter she'd said was closed. I have to go to him, she said flatly. I braced against the counter, trying to process. Okay, for how long? She didn't reply. The pause was heavy, charged. Then her voice returned, crisp as glass breaking. I need you to cancel the wedding. For a moment, I genuinely believed I'd misheard, that something glitched in the air between us. You... What? My throat tightened. Her tone remained even. I'm not coming back, Lucas. Not right now. He needs me. She paused again, and when she spoke next, her voice had sharpened. Icy. If that's something you can't handle, maybe this was never going to work. My grip on the counter turned my knuckles white. Sabrina, what are you saying? I asked, my voice fraying at the edges. She hesitated, just long enough to hint at either guilt or calculation. Her breathing had changed, off rhythm, not quite panic, not quite honesty. Then came the final sentence. If you can't obey, then stay alone. That word, obey, cut deeper than anything else. Don't protest, don't challenge, don't explain, just follow orders. As though I were some misbehaving adolescent refusing to accept the wisdom she'd so generously laid out for us both. As if my grief were an inconvenience, my thoughts an afterthought. My heartbeat pounded like war drums in my ears, but when I finally found the words, they came out flat, stripped of the weight I carried. Comply. No reply. Comply. This time softer, like a truth we'd already swallowed whole. We both knew where this was headed. A breath trembled through the phone line. "Lucas, it's complicated. You wouldn't understand. Try me." Silence stretched thin, then a breath drawn in like armor. "This isn't about you," she said finally, sharp and measured. "It's about what's right." "What's right?" I repeated, stunned, hollow. "One day you'll see," she said, her voice easing into something almost maternal. "You're too wrapped up in this, too close to it to think clearly." For a second, breathing felt optional, but I didn't shout, didn't beg, didn't demand to know why it had to be Kevin, or her. Deep down, I'd already realized this had never been about sickness. That was just the disguise. I looked down, my fingers wrapped around a fork still slick with risotto oil, catching light beneath fixtures meant for gatherings we never held. A kitchen built to impress, not to live in. And in that sterile shine, I saw it. A life more curated than lived. 3 words left my lips, precise and cold. "I understand." And then I ended the call. My knees faltered just enough to drop me onto the bar stool behind me. Time came apart after that, 5 minutes, maybe 10. I couldn't tell. I sat there staring blankly, at the marble counter, the far wall, the air in between, thoughtless, numb, not yet grieving, just paused. Then the phone lit up. Margot Monroe. I let it ring out. I already knew. Another call. Dr. Thomas Monroe, straight to voicemail. Then Margot again. I tapped the screen and played the first message. Her voice oozed with that perfect blend of concern and superiority the wealthy seem to wear like perfume. "Lucas, dear, I know this must be difficult, but I hope you can recognize how courageous Sabrina's decision truly is. Real empathy, real sacrifice, isn't common," she continued. "If anyone should understand the value of standing by someone in their darkest moment, it's you. That kind of loyalty means more than a little personal discomfort." The next voicemail started without prompting. Thomas now, his tone calm, detached, practiced. "Lucas, allow me to offer a different lens. This isn't rejection. It's an act of profound love, the truest kind. Your response is emotional, understandably so. But what Sabrina is doing? It's honorable. Being there for someone, even from her past, in their time of need. That's a measure of deep character." Each sentence struck like a slap. My thumb hovered over the delete button, then another message from Margot. "Lucas, your silence is disappointing. This isn't about a ceremony or a social expectation. It's something deeper, something raw and real. If you can't see that..." A pause, then the dagger. "Then maybe this marriage wasn't meant to happen at all." I didn't finish listening. I didn't have to. My body moved before thought arrived. First stop, the wedding site. I shut it down. Guest list erased, registry closed. In 60 seconds it all disappeared. Then the rings, both still resting in that velvet case on my dresser. I walked to the safe, placed them inside, spun the dial until it locked with a final click. The tuxedo, tailored in Milan untouched, still hung in the closet, sheathed in clear plastic like some sacred relic. I didn't touch it, just stared. Wondered if it would ever be worn, or if it would remain the most expensive lesson I'd ever bought. Then I tore the corkboard off the home office wall. Notes, seating charts, scribbled to-dos, follow up with the florist, double-check the band's contract. All of it, ripped away. A photo slipped to the floor. The one from Asheville. Us, beneath amber leaves, all smiles and light. I had once believed that image marked the beginning of everything. Now, it lay face down. I stood over it, breathing hard, lungs searing like I'd just run a marathon. Then I got a trash bag, invitations, save the dates, candle samples, tiny favors meant to impress. Every last piece, gone, gone. I first noticed the tremor in my hands. Subtle, rhythmic, unrelenting. I pressed my palms flat against the cold stone of the kitchen island, catching the reflection of my face in its polished sheen. Something inside me stilled. A quiet decision formed. I wouldn't chase. I wouldn't run after someone who had already turned away. I wouldn't stand in the wreckage of someone else's convictions, waiting to be blamed for how they justified their departure. If she could leave like that, then so could I, on my terms. I reached for my phone one final time. Sabrina, blocked. Margot, blocked. Thomas, blocked. I opened the group thread labeled Venue Florist Band and typed a single message. Effective immediately. Cancel all wedding plans for Lucas Calder. No postponements, no reimbursements. Keep the deposit. The event is canceled. Sent. The phone vibrated twice. Within moments, confirmation emails started arriving. I stood alone in a penthouse designed for two. I hadn't physically stepped outside that night, but part of me had already left. Some old, loyal version of myself who believed devotion meant endless sacrifice for people who wouldn't lift a finger to stop the bleeding. She chose someone else, burned the bridge behind her and never looked back. That was the line drawn. Mourning didn't crash in with tears or shouting, no fits of sorrow, no dramatic collapse onto the flawless marble floor. Just silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. I woke up exactly as I'd fallen asleep, propped against the couch cushions, still dressed from the day before, surrounded by the fading remains of what was supposed to be the best week of my life. A half-full trash bag of party supplies leaned against the wall. The ring box still lay open on the counter, a coffin without its corpse. I didn't touch my phone. I didn't need to. I already knew what I'd find. Missed calls, long messages, likely some scolding disguised as concern from Margot and Thomas. I wasn't interested. Instead, I went to the window. The city outside was pristine. Morning sunlight spilled across manicured lawns. Teslas glided past palm trees, unaware that anything had changed. But everything had. On the surface, it all looked untouched. Beneath that illusion, I knew I didn't belong here anymore. Maybe I never did. I stepped into the bedroom, pulled out a suitcase, then another, then one more. No fury, no chaos, just methodical motion, clean, efficient. I packed only what mattered: a few tailored suits, several shirts, a couple of jeans, watches, sneakers, the tuxedo meant for the wedding day, and the robe stitched with Calder Monroe on the sleeve. I left those behind. Dead weight. In the office, I opened a drawer and found the folder marked Property, Beverly Hills. My real estate lawyer's business card was clipped to the front. I stared at it briefly, then called. "Lucas Calder," he answered, bright and cheerful. "Always good to hear from you. What's going on?" "I want to sell the house," I said, flat. "Off the market. Quiet deal. Price is irrelevant, just make it clean." A pause. "You're certain?" "Do it." I hung up. Back in the kitchen, I opened my laptop. My fingers lingered over the keyboard for a moment, just enough to register the ridiculousness of it all. The website, the write-ups, the coverage of the startup founder and the socialite heiress. It had all been a polished act. I scrubbed it, deleted the Squarespace site, wiped the Dropbox folder, removed the Google Doc with the seating chart. Gone. Then came social media, Instagram, erased, Twitter, deleted, LinkedIn, stripped. Every trace of my entanglement with the Monroes, gone. As if it had never been real. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't playing a role. No image to guard, no facade to prop up. Just me. Oddly, it didn't sting. It felt fresh, like tearing off a dressing and discovering the wound had already begun to close. Another buzz. A message. I didn't open it, but I saw enough in the preview. "Lucas, we need to talk. You're being unreasonable." From Sabrina. Unreasonable. I actually laughed, short and bitter. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. She left. She gave ultimatums. She ran to her ex 4 days before the wedding, and now I was the one being unreasonable. No, that was enough. I pulled up my contacts list, found the entry labeled Elias Driver, and tapped out a quick text. Be ready in 2 hours. Airport pickup. One way. Don't ask questions. My gaze swept across the penthouse, the polished stone countertops we once picked together, the wine cooler she insisted we had to have to impress people, the velvet sofa imported straight from Milan. None of it felt like mine anymore. It was hers. It was theirs. All part of the aesthetic they'd so carefully constructed. And if they could leave me behind so effortlessly, then I could walk away just as cleanly. But this time, I wouldn't leave, shattered. No begging. I hauled out the suitcases, lined them up beside the door, and let my eyes settle once more on the apartment. Take it, I whispered. All of it's yours. I locked the door, not to protect what was inside, but because I wouldn't be coming back. The moment the plane rose off the tarmac, I felt something I hadn't experienced in ages. Release. I didn't know my exact destination, anywhere that wasn't Beverly Hills, but my thoughts kept circling back to Manhattan. LA was all surface and edits. New York was friction and reality. No over-curated brunch tables, no staged proposal photos at sunset, no forced grins that collapsed under pressure. Just movement, grit, and people too busy to care about your last name or your follower count. As the California coast slipped beneath the clouds, the weight in my chest finally started to lift. Landing at Teterboro, I felt it immediately. Heavier air, colder, sharper, unfiltered. On impulse, I opened Zillow and began scrolling. Tribeca, Soho, anything distant from the glossy high-rises and influencer nests. I wasn't chasing sleek or stylish. I was hunting for something real, untouched. Then I saw it. A loft in Tribeca, no renovations, sold as is, cash only. The photos showed cracked brick, worn concrete, rusted beams, and a crooked window that hadn't shut in decades. It was perfect. I called the agent.